All right. So take the Word of God and turn now, please, to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. And I know this is a familiar passage of Scripture to most of the well-churched among us, but I want to point out a few things that may be not as obvious. So let's consider this idea of how to love your wife. And it is obvious in the text, okay? It is in verse number 25 where the Bible says, "Husbands, love your wives." So I want to give you three headings as far as understanding how to love your wife, and there'll be a bunch of subheadings under each of these three main headings. So if you're a note taker, you can jot some of these things down. But here's the first one. How to love your wife. The first one is love her enough to lead her. Love her enough to lead her. And the text does indicate that to us. It does say, "Husbands, love your wives" in verse 25, but in verse 23 it says that the husband is the head of the wife. So for the husband to be the head of the wife implies that he must be prepared to lead her. I overheard a wife talking to another female just 2 or 3 weeks ago, members of our church, and this wife said to the other female something like, "My husband just doesn't lead in our home." And she said, "One of my greatest desires is that my husband would be the leader in our home." And it's a good thing for her to desire that. For her to desire that, it's obviously a bad thing that he's not providing that. And more, especially in a society that's attacking masculinity, more and more there are men who know the biblical obligation they have to lead their wives and to lead their home, but more and more men are becoming derelict in their responsibility. Just taking a step back, saying, "Yeah, she wants to lead, I'm going to let her lead." Or the society portrays men on sitcoms as just kind of dopes. And so we give in to the societal pressure, or maybe we give in to some kind of spouse pressure, and we just free ourselves of the leadership. And when we do that, we are stepping outside of the will of God in our home. Love her enough to lead her. And in order for you to lead her, before you can lead her, you've got to know where you're going. I mean, that's intrinsic in leadership. And for some men, that takes years to figure out. Other people figure it out at a very early age. I mean, where are we going? And some men propose to a female because they want to be married, not because they're looking for a teammate to accomplish their goals, because at that point maybe they don't even understand where they're going in life. They just propose because they want intimacy. And I get that that's a motivating factor for marriage. Sure, that's a part of our biological chemistry. But you've got to have some direction to you before you take somebody under your wing that you are now supposed to provide direction for. What I'm saying is, if you're a husband and you love your wife, you're going to be able to take a stand. And not a stand that's rooted in some kind of abstract naivete, but you need to be a man who has a spine. The idea of taking a stand, you have to have a functioning spine, okay? Stand up for something. Go a biblical direction. You have to, as a husband, if you love her, you lead her, so you have to have a sense of, honey, this is right and this is wrong. You have to have a sense of, this is where we've been and this is where we're going. This is what we stand for, and this is what we stand against. I'm suggesting that you love her enough to lead her, and I think some of these things are on the screen there, and that's helpful. So you need to have clear goals and clear direction, and the details of some of this direction may vary, but make sure there is clear direction. All right? So love her enough to lead her, and before you can lead her, you yourself have got to know where you're going. So sort those things out. What do you stand for? And what is right? And what is wrong? And how are you navigating the pressures of life? Why did you recruit her to be your life partner? Why did you get down on that one knee? Was it just some kind of self-serving intimacy agenda? Or was it, hey, I need a helpmeet in life and I want to do great things for God? And you got to sort those things out. Here's another heading here. Love her enough to lead her, and a subheading is that leadership is a constant battle. I said in that marriage sermon, I think, something about valuing peace. How many of you were here when I preached that? Would you raise your hand? All right. How many of you heard it later on sermon audio or on YouTube? Okay, a couple of you. Good, good. So I emphasized peace and valuing peace and keeping the peace and being a fire extinguisher, not a fire starter. So value peace. And love, charity, covers a multitude of sins. There's a lot of stuff you overlook in marriage. But I did say that there are some things, though, that you interrupt the peace over. There are some times you put your foot down. Now, in that sermon, I did not elaborate on that. You say, why? Well, because my wife was sitting there. I didn't want to deal with that. No, I'm just kidding. But, no, my wife already knows there are some things that I put my foot down over. Yes, I value peace, and yes, we can overlook a lot of things, and I hope she overlooks a lot of things that I say. It might be inflammatory, and I want to overlook those things for her. But I am the leader of my home. And if there is a threat to that leadership, whether it's innocent and unintentional or not, it still needs to be addressed. It is still something worth putting your foot down over. And it is a constant battle in your home. And that is not just unique to my home. That takes us all the way back to the garden in Genesis 3. And we're going to discuss Genesis 3 in the main sermon at 10:30 here in just a little bit. But Genesis 3:16 indicates that her desire shall be contrary to the desire of her husband. That a wife, Eve, that she will try to assert her leadership over her husband. And so what I'm saying is, that my wife helps me, and my wife influences me, but she should not be leading me, okay? And that's how it should work in all of our homes. And it is a constant battle where you say, and listen, I reject egalitarian ideas. I am a complementarianist, which is the idea that, yes, we're equal, Britton and I, in value before God, equally important to God, but we have two distinct roles. And her role complements my role, and my role complements her role, and my role in my home is to lead. This is a biblical idea that is specifically mentioned for pastors, but is not unique to just pastors. I mean, Paul's writing to Timothy, how can a man care for the house of God if he can't rule his own house? That's the idea. We are called to be leaders, and there will be a constant battle of vying for that leadership. And you say, Pastor Johnson, we don't have that battle in our home. Well, I got news for you. That means you're probably not leading. She is. I mean, at minimum, the battle will exist in her heart, and at maximum, the battle for leadership will exist in your marriage. All right? So if you love her enough to lead her, which means, first of all, you got to know where we're going, and then secondly, recognizing that it's a constant battle vying for leadership, and you do it with love, and you do it with discernment, and you battle with patience and deference as much as you can, but you still take a stand for the leadership in your home. All right, here's a letter C subheading here, and that is that leadership enhances your marriage. Okay? Leadership enhances your marriage. Females are attracted to males who lead them. This idea that, oh, I just love her, so I'm just going to give her everything she wants and whatever she wants to do, and she can just have it, and and she becomes the leader, and you become, and the popular word now today is a simp. A simp. It's somebody that is overly, I looked it up, okay, just to make sure I wasn't saying a word I shouldn't here, but it is somebody who is overly attentive and overly submissive to the female in their life. I mean, yeah, I want to give her stuff, and yeah, I want her to know the blessings of being married to this husband in particular. But at the same time, listen, she may say, I want you to give me this, and I want you to give me this. But if you just keep doing that, eventually she will, because she's human, take you for granted. There is a certain appeal that exists in the heart of a woman for a man who is leading her. He's not always just giving her everything she wants. Occasionally he's saying, no, we're not doing that. We're going this direction. Men, we primarily are attracted to looks, but ladies are primarily attracted to leadership. And if you don't lead them, they may continue to love you, but they might love you like a child. They eventually, lots of ladies stop being attracted to a man who does not lead them. So if you want to make their heart flutter again, you should be the leader that God wants you to be in their lives. All right? So if you're going to lead them, you got to know where you're going. You got to recognize it's a constant battle. This third heading is that leadership enhances your marriage. And so all along the way, I want to encourage you to be chivalrous. Open the door for your wife. Don't let her open the door for herself. My wife will sometimes get ahead of me, and I say, Britton, wait, and I will go and get that door for her. Do that for your wife. Be chivalrous. I heard somebody say recently that chivalry is not dead, it's just been asleep for a little while, okay? So we need to bring it back. And by the way, one reason why we're by ourselves without women is because I'm telling you, you should open the door for your wife. You should do any chivalrous thing that comes to your mind. And I don't want to say that in front of your wife if you're not already doing it. You know, it could shame somebody. I don't know how many of you do it. I learned the importance of it from a couple of the deacons around NorthStone Baptist Church. When I first got here, it was Pine Forest Estates Baptist Church, and I'm watching this gentleman open the door for his wife, and I'm watching my wife open her own door. I'm like, why am I not? What's my problem? You know, so I got with it, okay? So I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but I am saying that if you want her to follow you well, you got to love her well. And part of it is by being chivalrous, be respectful, always. Name-calling is foolish. Maybe we're all guilty of it at times. But ad hominem attacks don't solve problems in marriage. They only inflame problems, so be respectful. Be generous as you lead your wife. Protect her and provide for her and pastor her, which is the idea of shepherding her. All along the way, be the leader. All right, so there's the first idea. Here's the second idea. And that is love her enough to lead yourself well. Okay? Love her enough to lead yourself well. And that's interesting to me because verses 28 through 33 of Ephesians 5 bring up how we tend to love ourselves. Verse 28, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. Now you know, if you were here for the Genesis 1 and 2 message, that I mentioned how Paul and Jesus quote Genesis 2. This idea here in verse number 31 of Ephesians 5, Paul is quoting the Old Testament when he says, they two shall be one flesh. It describes a union in marriage. Okay, so the two are one flesh, and I'm telling you that you should love your wife enough to lead yourself well, because she is now attached to you, and the two of you are one. And if you're a mess, you're not loving her like you should. I mean, you've got to take care of yourself. Don't be dead weight that she has now become one with. And what do I mean by lead yourself well? A couple subheadings here. And this first one is, if you're leading yourself well, you control your appetites. You control your appetites. I'm talking about fleshly appetites, among others. Pornography is as easily accessible as it has ever been in human history. And it is sad and it is startling. Working at that youth center in Indianapolis for 8 years with inner city kids, lots of boys at the youth center, there were so many times where I would sit with a young teenager who is hooked on pornography. And more young ladies are hooked on pornography. It's a fleshly appetite, and every man who has any sense of technological understanding knows that it's extremely easy to access, and every man, though, that is real before God also knows that it has a mental, spiritual, and physical side effect that's hugely detrimental. Control your appetites. There's a lot of things that are beyond our control. We can't control what other people are going to do. We don't get to control what God does. He's God. Of course we don't get to control that. But you can control you. I want to be strong on this idea. After having counseled and worked with people hooked on these kinds of things, I unequivocally say, and after having studied closely the book of Proverbs, from a biblical sense, I say that pornography is the habit of a fool. And that is, and I use the word fool based on the definition provided in the book of Proverbs. Pornography is the habit of a fool. Fools watch pornography. And what does a man feel like when he's done watching pornography? He feels like a fool. And the only thing more foolish than watching pornography yourself is watching pornography with your wife. I've also counseled with men who, not just teenagers, but married men, who started watching it, and then they got caught by their wife, and then they begin watching it with their wife. Love her enough to lead yourself well. And what you'll do if you watch that nonsense with her is you create a very insecure wife. Insecure about what she looks like in front of you, and she's thinking, what's he thinking? And it just ends up creating more problems in the marriage. People say, oh, well, we just need to spice up our life. That is the talk of a fool. So fleshly appetites, pornography, not only that, but food. Let me say something about food. Make sure you take care of yourself physically, because you don't want your wife to have to take care of you when you're old. Now listen, I know that there are some things that are beyond our control. You could get hit by a vehicle and you're in a wheelchair and she's got to take care of you. There's things beyond our control. But there is a degree of things, again, that we can control. And I don't want to have some food-related disease whereby I am later in life unable to take care of myself, and now because of my own foolishness, my own lack of ability to control my appetites, now my wife's got to take care of me. I'm saying so listen, James has a daily battle with his ghrelin, okay, my hunger hormone. I cut myself off from eating after my dinner meal. So sometimes I'm done eating for the day at 5 o'clock, sometimes 6, but depending on social reasons, sometimes I'll eat a little later, but never after 7. Never after 7. I mean, I shouldn't say never. Probably 8 out of 10 days, on average, I have a battle with my ghrelin. It's James against the ghrelin from after my dinner meal until I pillow my head at night. Now, I do that for sleep reasons. I want to sleep well. And for me, not everybody's like this, but for me, if I eat or drink anything late into the evening, it'll affect my sleep. So I cut myself off. So what I do is I battle the hunger hormone, and I take it personally. You know what I mean? Because my family might be eating snacks. My kids are young enough. They can eat and it not affect their sleep. Or my wife might be doing something. But I have decided I'm not going to eat after a certain time. But I hear them crunching. I hear the bag of chips. I smell some food being made, and my ghrelin is ratcheting up. Listen, men, we're supposed to be in control of ourselves. Control yourself well and say, okay, I have an appetite. I could eat. I've already had plenty of food throughout the day, but everybody else is eating. I'm saying control your fleshly appetites because, again, the two are one flesh. She's tied to you. And if you want her to be in control of her emotions or control of her own personal habits, if you model it, she then is potentially inspired by it. Control fleshly appetites, pornography, food. What about sleep? Don't make your wife wake you up. Men, wake yourself up. That's a problem more than maybe some people realize. Mama's going to come in here and wake me up. She ain't my mama. She's my wife. She's not supposed to wake me up. Get yourself up and get yourself going and work through these kinds of things. Control your fleshly appetites. Not only these things, but control your emotional appetites. Emotional appetites. Now, most men aren't excessive in sorrow, tears, We do cry. Jesus cried. It's not wrong to weep. But our excess is often not tears, but it's anger. I'm saying if you love her, you lead yourself well, and that's even in the emotional arena. And anger is not always wrong. There is a thing called righteous indignation. You ought to be righteously indignant over anything that threatens God's will for your home, God's will for your family. Righteously indignant over things that pertain to the world and the flesh and the devil. Showing moments of anger can actually be a very healthy thing, but the point is, lead yourself well. These things are to be harnessed. So there is a righteous anger and there is a selfish anger. Do not respond to your wife or to your children in selfish anger ever. At the same time, there is a side of men where we are supposed to be aggressive. It's okay to be aggressive. Now, I'm not saying be aggressive to your wife, but you ought to have that side of you because your wife takes comfort in that. If she knows that at any moment my husband can be righteously aggressive or can even be dangerous, that comforts a woman. You should be able to be dangerous because we live in a dangerous world. And so there needs to be a sense in your wife's heart that, yeah, my husband can take care of us. You might not be a trained fighter, but she ought to have a sense that, yeah, he is going to fight and maybe give his life to protect us. So be aggressive and maybe be competitive and certainly be confident and be willing and ready to be dangerous, but always be in control. She needs you to be capable of being dangerous because this is a dangerous world. So control your appetites. That's what I'm saying when I say lead yourself well. Here's another thing I'm saying. If you're leading yourself well, then you're going to get out of your comfort zone. If you're leading yourself well, you're going to get out of your comfort zone, and I suggest that you should be out of your comfort zone every single day. What did you do yesterday that was completely out of your comfort zone? A lot of men love that recliner, and we love that remote, and we love those comfort foods, and we don't do anything in a day, and sometimes in a week, or sometimes in months, that gets us out of our comfort zone. I mean, when was the last time you tasted pain? Whether it's push-ups or it's pull-ups, it's painful if you do that in excess, or you run some distance. I know more than one of you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and have had boxing training, and you're just out there kind of tasting some pain. And most men have a palate for pleasure. It's all we want to take in. But I'm telling you, you need to have a bit of a palate for pain, because if somebody ever tries to inflict pain on your family and you've got to defend your family, you've already tasted the pain. You're not as intimidated by it. You're ready to go. Your wife ought to have some sense in her brain that my husband is not just cowering and wanting to be comfortable all the time. This is about leading yourself well. Get out of your comfort zone on a daily basis. All right. So love her enough to lead her. Love her enough to lead yourself well. And here's the third and final idea. And that is love her enough to live for Him. Talking about the Lord. Love her enough to live for Him. And all these three main ideas that I've given you, they're all in Ephesians 5. They're all in this text. And this one might be the one that is less obvious, but it is certainly there. And I'll point it out here in just a minute from the text. But let me ask you this. Is your wife the focal point of your life? Now, don't answer out loud. Think about that. If she is, you've got problems, because she's not supposed to be. He is supposed to be. And if she has a sense that he is the focal point of your life, she's going to have a sense of security in her marriage. She's not going to be wondering, is he looking at pornography, or is he running over here with some female he met at work or whatever. If she has this confidence that my husband's focal point and top priority is the Lord. Love her enough to live for Him. So remember, we're supposed to love our wives. Verse 25 tells us, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Now, Christ does love the church. The church is his bride. And Christ died for the church. But please remember that Christ did all of that to accomplish the will of his Father. Think about that. Jesus' priority was his Father, and Jesus' blessing was his bride. I mean, we want these women to respect us. And the Bible tells us that wives are to reverence their husband. That's verse number 33 of Ephesians 5. And the wife, see that she reverence her husband. We are wired to desire respect. But what's interesting, a mostly synonymous word in Scripture with the word respect is the word fear. And the text that I had us consider starts out with the verse number 21, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. If we want our wives to respect us, then we have got to have respect for him. The two go hand in hand. She takes great comfort in the fact that you're a Christian and you have your own individual relationship with the Lord Jesus. Your wife should not be asking you, when was the last time you read your Bible? Honey, why aren't we going to church? Honey, so many of these women are the spiritual leaders in their home. And then the man is fine to take this default position like a child, like a boy, and shame on us if we're conducting ourselves in those ways. If you want her to respect you, see that you fear him. And remember, 1 Peter 3:7 tells us to dwell with them according to knowledge, right? You dwell with your wife according to knowledge. But remember, Proverbs 1:7 says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Before you can know anything about her, you've got to know him. That's what I'm saying. So, by way of review, by way of conclusion, how do you love your wife? Practically speaking, you love her enough to lead her. And then secondly, you love her enough to lead yourself well in all the areas of your life. You control your appetites. You get out of your comfort zone. And then thirdly, I said, you love her enough to live for him. She should have a sense that you love the Lord primarily, and then she'll have peace, and you'll potentially have harmony in your marriage, maybe like never before. You'll apply these three ingredients. Go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes, please, if you would, for just a moment. And with your heads bowed and eyes closed, I want to say this. Usually Sunday school has an opportunity for dialogue, and so we're ending a little early. If there's something you want to add to this or something you want to ask about, then I want to open myself up to that for just a few minutes here. But then also in the quietness, I'd like you to spend time praying for your wife, praying for your marriage, maybe praying for your future spouse. Maybe God's called you to singleness, and maybe pray for contentment in singleness. Maybe after you've heard all this, thank him for the call to be single. However he spoke to you, would you talk to him just for a few moments?